Welcome back to some more Umineko when they cry. Time we left off, Eva and Hideyoshi decided to leave the parlor so they can rest up at the guest room of the mansion, and stuff went back to normal and the such, and then when dinner is about to be ready, Genji with Kanon decided to try to call those two to say, hey, it's time to eat, but there was no response, and they were about to unlock the door because, especially when they got the another suspicious letter. Could it be by Kenzo or someone else? Who knows? Let's continue. Oh man, this is exciting. There was the sound of the door unlocking, and after slowly turning the knob, he slowly started opening the door. Alright. Let's see what happens. Light seeped through the crack of the door. Were they in the room? Or had they forgotten to turn out the lights? Clank. It was the sound of the door chain being pulled tight. The chain had been secured. The chain couldn't be secured from the outside, so it also proved that they were in the room. The sound of voices on the TV seeped out of the room. The lights, the chain, and the TV. All of these things made it clear they were in the room, but there was no sign of them. Genji called to Eva once again through the crack of the door, but there was no answer.
Genji-sama, いかがしますか?
As part of their job, the servants were able to unlock almost any lock in the mansion, but they had no way to open the door with the chain. The only way to get by the chain was to cut it. That was certainly not permitted as part of a servant's usual work. A creepy chill had already rushed up their backs. Kanon held his breath again and tried to sense someone through the door, but even so, he was not able to sense anyone.
私は奥様をお呼びしてくる。カノンはチェーンの切断を。
Gonna let Kanon do all the work?
はい。
As Kanon hurried away to get a cutting tool, Genji called him to a stop.
待てカノン。厨房に戻り、熊沢と行動するように。断じて一人で行動してはならんぞ。
はい。
Yeah, don't get cocky there.
かしこまりました。
It looked like Kanon was wondering why he had to do something so troublesome in the middle of this urgent situation. But Genji had said it out of wariness. He didn't care what happened to himself, but in the worst case scenario, he didn't want anything to happen to Kanon. In the kitchen, Kumasawa was piling food on the serving cart, and Nanja was waiting for Genji. Apparently wanting to show him a move he finally thought of that might turn the tables on him. But Genji's appearance immediately told him that something was wrong.
おや、どうしましたか、源氏さん。
南條先生、申し訳ありませんが、この勝負は一度中断させてください。
Oh boy.
カノンはチェーンを頼む。熊沢、食事の配膳は一時中断し、カノンと同行するように。私は奥様のところへ行く。南條先生もご一緒に。
何かあったんですかな。
See, Nanja was like, what is going on? Genji took Nanja, who still didn't know what was going on, and quickly left the kitchen.
熊沢さん、申し訳ありませんが、僕と一緒に来てください。
何があったんですか、カノンさん。
Kumasawa, she was like, "What's going on?" Kumasawa said almost exactly the same thing as Nan, unable to take in the situation, and chased after Kanon, who had flown out into the hallway. Taking Kumasawa with him, Kanon went to a storage room and looked through the tools packed in toolboxes and hanging all over the walls, trying to find something that could be used to cut the chain.
何を探してるんですか？私も手伝いますよ。
ドアチェーンを切断するんです。大きめの番線カッターはどこだっけ？
ドアチェーンを？どうしてそんなことをするんですか？
エヴァ様たちのお部屋にチェーンが。
Couldn't you just yank the chain off the door or something, or just kick it off? I'm pretty I've seen TVs and I've seen shows and movies that did stuff like that before. I don't know about cartoons, because sometimes cartoons can be like defies the laws of logic. The chain to Eva-sama and Hideyoshi-sama's group.
中にいらっしゃるはずなのに、お声をかけても返事がないんです。
It took Kumasawa some time to figure out how cutting the chain in Eva and Hideyoshi not answering were connected, but she did realize that this was an urgent situation.
これなら多分。
Kanon took down a very large wire cutter that had been hanging on the wall. It was called a cutter, but maybe it'd be easier to understand if we said it was shaped like a large pair of pliers. Kanon remembered once being warned that this dangerous tool could easily cut through one of your fingers. Well then. Kanon took that and rushed up the stairs. He already knew instantly he should fight for every minute, every second to open it quickly. Or perhaps it was already.
待ってください、カノンさん。
早く。
Kumasawa eventually caught up with him, gasping for breath with both hands on her knees. When Kanon changed his grip on the wire cutters and looked up at the door, he let out an struck speechless. What? Oh shit, son. What the fuck?
何ですかこれは。
Has this been hell that we had walked into? Kumasawa screamed weakly, her face pallid. That was no surprise, because right there on the door, just like the magic circle that had been drawn on the shutter of the Rose Garden Storehouse, there was another eerie shape drawn with a blood-like paint. However, it would be odd to call this one a magic circle, because unlike what most people would expect, it wasn't a circle with shapes drawn inside it, but a slightly more complicated geometrical shape. However, those strange characters filling in the gaps, which weren't from the alphabet, were the same kind as the ones on that magic circle on the shutter. But the thing that had Kanon struck speechless wasn't how eerie the magic circle was. It was that something like this hadn't been here a short while ago. First, he had taken a trip back to the kitchen. After that, he'd gone to the storage room to grab a tool, then headed right back. Put those together, and it couldn't have been more than 5 minutes. How could someone add something this creepy during that period of time? And as though it had just been drawn, almost like the door itself was bleeding, several unsettling vertical red lines slowly dripped down, getting longer and longer. The work of magic, the forbidden spell. Kumasawa's knees gave way as she sank down on the spot. If Kumasawa hadn't done this first, then Kanon surely would have wanted to.
ベアトリーチェ様。
ベアトリーチェ様の仕業ですよ。恐ろしや恐ろしや。
You know, judging from the looks of it, it looks like a freaking in the middle, looked like a door. Kanon gulped, then readied the wire cutter and approached the door. He didn't want to get close to this disturbing magic circle, and he really didn't want to touch the steadily dripping substance that looked like blood. But if he didn't get close, he wouldn't be able to cut the chain. Fighting this cold feeling, he gulped again, and after gathering his courage, he went even closer, putting the wire cutter up against the chain. He then pressed with all of his strength, managing to cut through the chain far more easily than he'd anticipated. The cut chain fell into two separate parts, which continued to clang as they swayed back and forth.
カノンさん、足元に封筒が。しかもこれは、親方様のもの。
Did we dare open up the envelope and read what's inside? It looked like Kumasawa had also noticed the western envelope at the bottom of the door, and that the sealing wax had been sealed with the head's ring. Kanon hesitated for just a second over whether he should open the letter first or check inside the room, but he eventually decided on fulfilling his original purpose. Kanon pulled the handkerchief out of his pocket. This was so he wouldn't leave fingerprints on the door. If his worst fears were realized, the police would want to investigate this room too. He slowly pushed the door open. It doesn't look like a slow opening though, it went fast. He slowly pushed the door open. He was able to more clearly hear the sound of the television, which had been seeping out faintly this whole time.
Eva-sama.
Eva was lying face up on the bed. On the bed with her shoes still on? Kumasawa, who had fearfully entered after Kanon, who was hiding behind his back, screamed a short eek again when she saw Eva like that. Eva's shoes had been the first part of her that Kanon had seen, so the oddness of wearing shoes in bed was the first thing to strike him. But when Eva's head shifted into his line of sight, Kanon couldn't help but let out a short scream like Kumasawa. Right in the middle of Eva's forehead, something had been placed? Something was growing there? No. Right in the center of her forehead, wasn't an old-fashioned knife? That or some weapon, like it was sticking out. Oh, there's the music that got me in the copyright. At the base of where it was stuck in, blood dripped down, staining the sheets on the other side bright red. Kumasawa's knees gave way once more and she sank down on the floor. Her mouth kept flapping open and closed, but she couldn't even scream. Eva was dead, with some kind of weapon sticking out of her forehead. Both eyes were open wide, and the image of the person who killed her must have been burned into them. But the only mouth capable of naming that person had been shut for all eternity. Even though her forehead was the last place they wanted to look, they couldn't tear their eyes from it. Right there, the weapon was stuck into Eva's forehead, standing almost perfectly upright. And on the handle was a complicated design that you wouldn't expect to see on an ordinary weapon. That thing could be summed up with the word occult. It was a vulgar object, with a design that might have been of some defect.
Hideyoshi-sama wa... Hideyoshi-sama!
Eva was on top of her bed, but the other bed was empty. Where was Hideyoshi? After taking a backwards glance at Kumasawa, still on her knees and stupefied, he checked the bathroom just in case. At the moment he opened the door, he was greeted by steam and the sound of the shower. The bathroom was of the same familiar style as most hotel bathrooms. When taking a shower, a waterproof curtain was used to keep water from flying out. Oh my god. Hideyoshi fucking died. That waterproof curtain was half open, and lying tumbled down in the bathtub was Hideyoshi, completely naked with both eyes open, and pointing right at Kanon. Just like Eva, a weapon with a demon-like design was stuck into his forehead. Since his head had been under the shower's hot water this whole time, his face wasn't half covered, and filthy with blood like Eva's had been. But the sight of him dead while still taking a shower was tragic enough. Just then, they heard Natsuki's voice coming from the hall. She was probably coming with Genji.
またしてもこのような落書きが。この手紙は
The letter.
中には何と。
いえ、まだ読んでおりません。
That I am curious.
うかつに触らん方がいいですな。犯人の指紋が残っとるかもしれん。警察に渡した方がいい。
わざわざ手紙を残すくらいです。どうせ指紋など残っていません。
As Natsuki said that, she picked up the envelope, and before checking its contents, she entered the room herself, where she found Eva dead.
エヴァさん。
奥様、こちらには秀吉様も。
これはむごいですな。
カノン、シャワーを止めてあげなさい。気の毒にも程があります。
はい。
Kanon gripped his handkerchief and twisted the valve, turning off the shower. In the bathtub, a small jar of body soap had fallen with its cap off. It really looked like he'd been attacked while taking a shower. Oh, excuse me. There was still a small splash of blood clinging to the white bathtub, and the combination of red and white made a horrible contrast.
南條先生。
わかっとる。市販は出とらんな。守護工場も始まっとらん。おそらく殺されてから1時間経ったかどうかというところだろう。
That was a fast death. 6 people died, plus 2 that died. That makes 8. Since they were killed.
しかし、このような柄の短い凶器で頭蓋骨を。考えられん。
The works of a the length of a dagger. Nanjo checked their pulse and their pupils, making certain of their deaths once more. As Kanon watched this business-like treatment, he thought, "Couldn't you tell at a glance that they're dead without doing all that?" Nanjo thought about removing the weapon, but then decided it'd be better to preserve the scene and hand it over to the police, so he left it alone. But a close inspection of the face showed that it didn't have a blade. In fact, it was more conical than blade-shaped. He noticed that, rather than a knife, it was more like a short-handled spear, something with a shape better suited for thrusting than slicing. Rather than a short spear, you might call it a thick ice pick. At any rate, after looking at the scene, No further words were needed to describe what sort of terrible purpose such eerily designed weapons were originally made for, nor was it necessary to explain how they carried out their function. Natsuki, hoping to escape the repulsive steam filling the bathroom soon as she could, covered her mouth with a handkerchief and dashed from the room. Just viewing their gruesome bodies for an instant had been enough to burn the image into her eyes. If she looked any longer, that image would surely remain in her vision for all of eternity. The rising urge to vomit was exactly the same feeling she'd had that morning at the gardening storehouse. For a while, Natsuki couldn't help but stand with her back, facing the guest room, fighting that sickness in her stomach.
とにかくこの部屋を子供たちにジョージ君に見せるわけにはいきません。
George is going to be devastated as hell.
至急この部屋を閉じなさい。見せられませんとも。両親のこんなむごい姿をとてもジョージさんには。
But they could tell that those fiercely racing footsteps in the hallway belonged to George, even before he came dashing into the room. George and the other children had been waiting in the parlor. However, when they saw Genji speak to Natsuki, when they saw her turn pale and fly out of the parlor, they felt a sense of foreboding, whatever you call it. And when they saw a large group of people gathered around the guest room, they were sure of it.
父さん
Oh no!
母さん
なんだよこれ、また魔法陣かよ。
Maria just has no words.
エヴァおばさんたちは無事なんだよな。おいカノン君、これは何の騒ぎなんだ。
The fuck do you mean they're not safe?
バトラ様。
No words. Kanon didn't have to say anything. George's scream after he ran into the room told them everything they needed to know.
誰がこんなことを。殺してやる、殺してやる。
ジョージ君、しっかり。
Natsuki touched George's shoulder with her hand, but he violently shook her off. George fell over beside Eva and buried his face in the bed in front of his mother's face, wailing. Then he pounded on the bed with his fist over and over again.
ジョージ兄さん、しっかり。バトラ様。
Badler had his back against the wall of the hallway and was covering his eyes with his right hand and weeping without restraint.
ひでえぜ。心に決めた女を婚約した次の日に失った。同じ日に親父とおふくろまで殺されるなんてよ。そんなのあんまりにもむごいじゃねえか。
Of course, it's sad whenever anyone dies, no matter who it is. But to Badler, those left alone by the deaths of others were far more worthy of pity. Everyone here now had lost someone close to them. George wasn't the only one to be pitied. However, George's pain was far greater than everyone else's.
バトラー。
そりゃよ、人はいつか死ぬぜ。人間誰だっていつか死別の悲しみと戦わなきゃならねえ日が来るだろうよ。でもよ、そいつは兄貴にとってはずっと未来の話で、しかもそいつは一つずつ順番に訪れるべきもんじゃねえかよ。無ごすぎるぜ。やろうやろう。少しは人の情けってもんがねえのかよ。
Fucking Maria just staring at Valor crying.
バトラ、泣かない泣かない。
The fuck? Maria tried to comfort Badler in a mechanical sounding voice. Badler violently wiped his tears.
ああ、くそ、もう流さないぜ。悔し涙も悲しみの涙ももう二度と流さねえぜ。ああ、全然ダメだ。俺たちは魔女様に爪を食らってるわけだ。主勢一方ってわけだ。そりゃダメだぜ、全然ダメだ。
Didn't you just fucking throw your charm away or some shit?
チェス盤がひっくり返っちまうぜ。
Oh shit, here we go again.
野郎は俺たち羊が明日まで逃げる手段もなく怯えてるだけだろうと思ってるだろうよ。だからひっくり返すぜ。明日までこの島から逃げられねえのは野郎も同じだ。しょんべんちびりそうになりながら逃げ隠れするのは俺たちじゃねえ、野郎の方だ。暴いてやるぜ、必ずな。明日までに。いや、明日なんか待たねえ、今夜だ。
What?
今夜中にその胸ぐらを掴み上げてやる。
Shit, man. Tragedy. Sunday, October 5th,
とにかく
1986.
この部屋は警察が来るまでこのままにして施錠します。いいですね。
Natsuki announced it as though she didn't care whether they agreed or not. If anyone had a right to object, it would have been George, but he looked as though he shed through enough tears. George nodded slightly, still facing away from the others, and when he stood up, everyone else agreed too. Natsuki still hadn't opened that western envelope with that family head that she'd picked up. But now that they decided to leave this room, she decided to unseal it in the parlor, where everyone could watch. As soon as they walked out into the hallway to head back to the parlor, some of them immediately felt something out of place, or maybe sensed something strange.
答えよ。
Stinks? What?
マリアもわかるか？こりゃ何の匂いだよ。ひでえ匂いだぜ。
When everyone sniffed the air, they did notice a horrible burnt smell drifting through the hallway. One that none of them had smelled until then. Oh yeah, we should look at the characters, right? I'm pretty sure it updated. Yeah. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's 8. And there's Kinzo that is missing. Let's see. Eva. Found on the bed of the guest room inside the mansion with a weapon resembling an ice pick having been rammed into her forehead. The windows and door to the room were locked from the inside and even the chain was set. No way could a human have killed her. No way. And there's Hideyoshi. Found in the bathroom, the same guest room that Eva was found in, with a weapon resembling the same weapon, having been rammed into his forehead just the same as Eva. You can't see either of them by looking through the gap at the door while the chain is set. Can't see and can't reach. Go on. Could a human have killed them then? Oh boy. When everyone's okay, let me read this again. When everyone sniffed the air, they did notice a horrible burnt smell drifting through the hall. Hold on. Is there another person that had been killed and except he got burned to death? One that none of them had smelled until then.
私、ちょっと厨房を見てきます。
Oh boy.
火はちゃんと消したはずなんですよ。
Alright. Well, I do need to get some water, so I'll be right back. Alright, I'm back. So, let's continue. See where that burnt smell is coming from. After noticing a burnt smell, it was natural that Kumasawa, who had just been using the burner in the kitchen, suspected that her own slip-up had caused it. Kumasawa hastily dashed away.
Kanon, Kumasawaと行きなさい。一人にさせないように。
はい。
After nodding at Genji's order, Kanon followed after her. He wasn't running, but as he followed her, he tried to search for the cause of the smell in other directions as well.
臭い。ふー。
これは確かに鼻が曲がりそうな匂いですね。しかし換気のために窓を開けてもいいものか。
But why though? Natsuki was reluctant to open the windows in a situation where self-defense was so important.
換気扇を回させましょう。窓を開ける必要はないと思います。
ジョージの兄貴、話しかけても大丈夫かよ。
I don't think he wants to talk to you at a time like this.
犯人を探す相談なら構わないよ。
It seemed that George hadn't managed to climb out of the abyss of sorrow. All that filled his chest now was the quiet flame of hatred towards the culprit, who had stolen the lives of the one he loved, and his beloved parents.
部屋にはチェーンがかかってた。さっき構造を見たが、とても外から細工できる代物じゃねえ。つまり、完璧な密室だったってことだ。そうなるね。バラ庭園の倉庫の時は、シャッターの鍵を使用人室からこっそりと持ち出したのだろうとか、あるいは複製の鍵を持っていた可能性とか、いくつか方法が想像できた。でもチェーンは違う。チェーンは一般に浸透した施錠方法の中で最もシンプルに密室を構築できる。
チェーンだけは物理的に破壊しない限り外からはどうにもならないぜ。じゃあつまり犯人は扉からは出入りしなかったってことなのか。
Well, whatever it isn't human, so it's not...
こりゃ面白いや。つい数時間ほど前にも扉以外でどうやって部屋から出入りしたのかってみんなで騒いだ気がするぜ。
Back then, we were all losing our cool, wondering how grandfather had disappeared from his room. The receipt Aunt Eva stuck in the door on a whim proved that the door had remained sealed. And since Aunt Natsuki was the only person to enter or exit during that time, she was under suspicion. Aunt Eva proposed a theory about how Aunt Natsuki might have thrown grandfather out the window and left by the door herself. But this door is much simpler. It was sealed from the inside by the door chain. The window had also been locked from the inside, and the bodies had been inside the room. This time it really had been, without exaggeration, a true closed room. That's right. If you include grandfather's disappearance, 3 cases have occurred, and all 3 times the door has been the point of interest. The first was the shutter. There was a key in the servant room, and if we assume everyone knew about that, this can't really be called a closed room. The next was the door sealed by the receipt. However, Aunt Natsuki entered that room, so if grandfather had left through the window or been thrown out, she would have been able to lock the window before escaping. Or like my theory, grandfather could have hidden under the receipt. Or like my theory, grandfather could have hidden until the receipt was gone and left the room later. Basically, this door can be defeated with a handful of desperate tricks. Battler's theory is kind of silly, but sure, in that sense, you really can't call this one a closed room either. And now we have the door sealed with the door chain. Finally, we have to give up. The window, the door, everything had been locked. It was a perfect closed room. The first hadn't been a closed room because everyone could be suspected. The second hadn't been a closed room because Aunt Natsuki could be suspected. But this time, no one can be suspected. It was a perfect closed room because the door chain formed a seal that blocked everyone equally well.
なら、犯人は室内に入らずに犯行に及んだ。
I mean, if it was a fucking perfectly sealed and locked up room, I'm pretty sure it's someone that isn't ordinary human being. So I don't know why you're trying to go deep in that.
部屋の外から何らかの方法で。
確かに。
It's the works of something else, for fuck's sake.
チェーンである以上、人が通れるほどは開けなくても、多少の隙間を開けることができる。ノックして顔を覗かせたところを襲うとか。いや、甘いか。
甘いよな。エヴァおばさんの遺体が扉のすぐそばだったなら、それも考えたぜ。だが、エヴァおばさんは部屋の奥のベッドの上。しかも、秀吉おじさんはバスルームだった。チェーンの隙間からでは姿を見ることもできねえし、手を伸ばすこともできねえ。
There's no way Eva would open the door that easily. They can't be that stupid.
ちくしょう、全然ダメだぜ。さっぱりだ。
Don't they have like guest rooms with like where you can peek on who's outside the room or some shit like that? Something was tugging softly at my sleeve. It was Maria.
おお、
Oh boy.
満足？
満足って何がだよ。
Satisfied. お boy.
バトラは親族の誰かを疑うのが嫌だから、犯人はベアトリーチェであってほしいと願ったよ。 からベアトリーチェは叶えた。バトラが言った通り、絶対に人間には無理なことをして、バトラに魔女の存在を信じさせてくれた。なのにわがまま。
I tapped Maria, who was laughing unpleasantly on the head with my fist.
ああ、叶えてくれてありがとうよ。今のはその礼と、不謹慎な時に笑ったことへの教育的指導だ。それより教えやがれ。エヴァおばさんたちの部屋の扉にも、また怪しげな落書きがされていた。あれもまた魔法陣なのか。
Doesn't even look like a magic circle though, from the way it's drawn.
あれは特に覚えやすい特徴的な形なんだから、あのくらい知っててほしいね。あいて。
知らねえから花を持たせてやってんだ。ごちゃごちゃ言わねえで解説しろい。
バトラは暴力的だね。あんまり意地悪すると教えないよ。あいた。言うよこのげんこつ男。あれは月の一の魔法陣だよ。
Of the moon.
何の意味がある？その魔法陣のご利益は？書かれてるヘブライ語の意味は？
記されているのは旧約聖書詩編第107編の16節。主は聖堂の扉を破り、鉄の栓抜きを打ち破ってくださいました。魔法陣の効用は2つ。1つはいかなる方法によって閉ざされた扉でも開くことができる。
そりゃ便利な魔法だぜ。つまり魔法の力に頼らなきゃ開けぬ密室の扉っていう魔女様のアピールってわけか。もう一つの効用は？
開かぬ扉を八方塞がりの事態に見立て扉を開く。難解な事態の時に用いることで、それまで思いつきもしなかった解決策を与えてくれるんだよ。平たく言うと、観察力や洞察力、ひらめきや直感を授けてくれるんだね。ベアトリーチェはバトラごとき人間風情に、この扉の開き方がわかるものかって挑発してるんだよ。
Fucking hell, Rudolph is right. Maybe Rudolph may be right. Balor is such a fucking disappointment. like you wish for Beatrice to do something and yet you're just, well, you fucking asked for it. It's like, what the fuck?
よーし、もう黙れご苦労。上等だぜ。その魔女の挑戦、受けてやら。
Oh my god. This motherfucker's so overly confident, so karma's gonna be coming.
マリアちゃん、この世に魔女も悪魔も存在しない。 父さんと母さんは誰かが殺した。それが僕のよく知る人間なのか知らない人間なのかはわからない。でもそのどちらであっても必ず人間なんだ。
しかしどうやって。せいぜい10センチ程度しか開かない扉の隙間からどうやったら室内の2人を。
Oh my god.
それにしても耐え難い匂いです。一体何事なのですか。
Kanon and Kumasawa, who had gone on ahead, realized the smell wasn't coming from the kitchen even before they arrived there. That was because they noticed an even thicker wave of stench rising up from the stairs leading to the basement, which they passed on their way to the kitchen.
ボイラー室。
Oh, the boiler room.
またボイラーの調子が悪いんでしょうか。
Those stairs led to the underground boiler room. The mansion's boiler was old and in poor condition. Both of them had witnessed problems with the boiler on several occasions, but they had never smelled the boiler belching out a stench like this before. Slam.
今の音は。
Huh. Bit of a interesting track there. That is what I want to know. Look at the look on Kanon's face. That's a new one. Like as always. The thing they heard from the basement was definitely the sound of a door closing. Kumasawa had phrased it as a question, but she already knew it couldn't be anything else. Kumasawa was so surprised at that sound that her knees gave way yet again and she cowered. After all, at that very moment, no one could have been in the boiler room. Just a few seconds ago, everyone had been crowded together around Eva and Hideyoshi's room. So who caused the sound of a door closing just now?
Kanon-san!
After taking a second to sort out the situation, Kanon ran down towards the basement. Since they'd heard the sound of a door closing just now, and there was no sign of anyone coming up the stairs, the person who'd closed the door had to be inside the boiler room now. If the boiler room had been a dead end, Kanon wouldn't have rushed in so hastily. But Kanon was a servant, so he knew. There were two entrances to the boiler room, one that opened to the mansion, and one that opened to the courtyard. If he didn't chase them now, they might slip away. Kumasawa reached the same conclusion long after Kanon did. But she couldn't let him go alone. If the thing in the boiler room was the culprit, an opponent who had easily killed 6 adults in the first murder, then no matter how Kanon confronted them, he wouldn't be a match. Of course, with this argument, even if Kumasawa joined them, it wouldn't change anything. At any rate, after the delay, Kumasawa decided that she mustn't let Kanon go alone, and she rushed down the stairs. Alright. The interesting background. We're at the boiler room. Oh, probably a good time. The hell? As soon that is a weird. Like as soon as I do this, it got rid of the sound. At that time, Kanon was already in the boiler room. The boiler room's characteristic damp heat tormented him. It had always been an unpleasantly smelly and hot place. And on top of that, the room was full of that horrible stench, which made Kanon feel like he was going to be sick. There was no doubt that this room was the source. In that case, Kanon should have been searching for where the smell was coming from. However, Kanon kept gazing straight forward as he grabbed a hatchet from a tool shelf, just off to the side of that door. He hadn't stretched out his hand because he wanted the hatchet. He had wanted to grab a weapon. Any weapon. Why? No words. Kanon gazed into the darkness where the naked light bulb couldn't pierce. Then, he answered.
ルーレットは数字と赤黒にかけて配当を競い合う。だが赤か黒かのようなリスクの低い賭けはその程度の配当しか与えられない。
The words coming from Kanon's mouth were swallowed up by the darkness. That darkness suddenly started to swirl, glittering. Oh shit. It was such a fantastical scene. Golden, sparkling butterflies that hid in the shadows all over the boiler room flapped their wings, twinkling beautifully, and gathered into in the darkness, disappearing. Kanon continued speaking, directing his words at the darkness as it swallowed the butterflies up. But as the butterflies gathered in the darkness, they, probably, no, they would certainly laugh. But Kanon continued to speak without faltering in the slightest.
逆により的中率の低いかけ方をすればそのリスクに比例した配当が与えられる。親方様は天文学的なリスクを的中できることを奇跡と呼び、その結果得られる天文学的な配当を魔法と呼んでいた。親方様とお前がどんな魔法を求めてルーレットに挑んでいるのか、そんなことには興味ない。しかしお前は忘れている。ルーレットには赤でも黒でもない目が出うることを忘れている。
Roulette has a special pocket called Zero, which means that the house takes everything in certain variants of the game. This means that all of the coins bet on the table will be swept up, just as though everyone has forfeit.
僕は一つだけ心に決めていた。もしシャノンが殺されて僕が生き残るようなことがあったなら、この身を投げ出してお前のルーレットを全て台無しにしてやろうと。
Now you're just asking for it.
これは親方様が決めたルールでも、ましてやお前が決めたルールでもない。このルールは僕が作った。僕はもう家具じゃない。お前のルーレットのゼロなんだ。
Kanon's face twisted with humiliation. It was clear that his defiance against his own weaknesses was being ridiculed somehow. Kanon's brow creased even further, and a fierce expression that he never shown to anyone appeared on his face. The hand grasping the hatchet was shaking. His sweat became drops which slid downward. Oh, it still keeps going. Oh my goodness. It was clear that this emotion causing Kanon's hand to shake wasn't just anger. See, if I do this, it's just going to keep going. However, Kanon has suppressed that emotion.
僕はもうお前の言葉に惑わされたりはしない。
Okay. I guess some of the sound effects gets cut off if I scroll up like that.
悪魔のルーレットはこれでおしまいだ。
Oh boy. Oh, Kanon. It was nice meeting you.
地獄にてさらに1000年。次の召喚者を待つがいい。ベアドリーチェ
When Kanon raised the hatchet and tried to dive into the darkness definitely sneered. It sneered at that courage as if it were vulgar, lazy, futile, and meaningless. Oh my. What a giggle. Kanon, his hatchet still held aloft, couldn't take another step after that. With a clang, the hatchet that he'd been grasping fell and rolled on the floor. And following that with a pair of thuds, Kanon's knees hit left, then right. That hand, which looked like it was trying to catch the sky now that the hatchet had been dropped, gradually lowered. What if I just do it like this? Oh, it's still. Usually some sound effects get cut off because it's kind of stupid of me to do that, but oh boy. Gradually lowered, landing on his chest. Then the other hand did the same. Right there, a handle with a demon-shaped design was buried into his chest. The same type of weapon that had been stabbed into Eva and Hideyoshi's foreheads was in Kanon's chest. Kanon was curled up in anguish, fresh blood dribbling from the corner of his mouth. It was makeup too extreme for Kanon's white skin. And then the butterflies dispersed. Around this scene, the glittering gold butterflies danced through the darkness, mesmerizing. It was a beautiful, beautiful dance, a funeral march of tribute, ridicule, and contempt for a single boy's self-sacrifice. Kanon had already been prepared for his own death, but although he could do nothing but accept the death he had received, he attempted one last measure of resistance. He grasped the handle of the weapon sticking into his chest with both hands, and gritting his teeth with an acute, unearthly pain, he pulled it out. For only a moment, a bright red spray gushed out. It made an unpleasant bloop sound. It probably resembled the sound of Kanon's soul as it was sucked into the swamp of the dead.
Kanon-san?
It took you long enough to show up. You were too late to save him.
Dareka!
Kumasawa screamed at the incomprehensible sight in front of her. Kanon was lying in a pool of blood. Kumasawa's heart was a complete mess. Ah, what a horrible fate. He wouldn't have been killed. He wouldn't have been killed if I had been with him. Ah, what incredible luck. If I had been with him, I might have been killed too. As she screamed, her expression was filled with complete confusion, and all over the muscles of her face were pulled up, almost as though she was smiling while crying, but no one could have made fun of an expression like this.
何事ですか、熊沢。返事をしなさい、熊沢。
The first one to dash in was Natsuki, holding the rifle. Battler and Genji dashed in after her. Normally, they probably would have started discussing the origin of that violent stench filling the boiler room. But after they saw Kanon, who was lying on the ground as if he were drowning in an ocean of his own blood, the stench wasn't important anymore.
Kanon! 返事をしなさい。源氏、南條先生をここに。
Too late, he's already dead. Natsuki realized that even though Kanon was on the verge of death, he was still conscious. So she sent Genji to get the doctor. Natsuki, holding the rifle aloft, faced the darkness in the center of the boiler room and shouted,
そこに隠れているものは何者です。おとなしく出てきなさい。そちらから出てこないなら容赦なく撃ちます。
What, are you gonna shoot out the bullet into the blank void?
ライトだ。おばさん、照らすぜ。
Badler, thinking quickly, took a large flashlight from the tool shelf alongside the door and used its light to cut through the darkness Natsuki was glaring into, but the light only shone on mechanical-looking piping in the door. The door had been left open a small crack, and it was obvious that someone had left through there in a hurry.
夏日おばさん、あの扉はどこへ？
源氏、あの扉はどこに通じているのですか？
中庭です。
Courtyard.
逃がすかよ、くそこの野郎
！Oh boy. Well, now's a good time to end it from here. Well then, we'll pick it off for the next part. Next part, let's see if Ballard find the quote-unquote culprit. So, like, comment, and subscribe. We'll be seeing you guys later. Have a good one.